All right, so welcome everybody. E komo mai, thank you for being here. We really are grateful for your time on a Friday during what may be your lunch break, and we appreciate you being here. I'll just make one last announcement for the people who may have just joined. If you haven't yet, there is a link to a sign-in form on the screen and in the chat box that we are asking folks to fill out. We just use the information internally, we don't share it, but we use it to track the equity in our outreach and engagement process. I also want to make the disclosure that we are recording this session and may post the recording on our Climate Ready Oʻahu website, as we've done in past rounds of engagement, so that folks who weren't able to join us today will still be able to go back and get the information that was presented and also have the benefit of the discussion and the opportunity to weigh in through the website as well. Okay, so we have one more person joining. There we go. Hi. So I apologize, I'll make the announcement really quickly once more. June, there's a link that Isabella just put into the chat that goes to a sign-in form that we're asking folks to fill out. And then we also are recording the session so that we can post it on our Climate Ready Oʻahu website for people to come and watch later. All right, so let's get started. We want to just quickly go over some virtual meeting guidelines so that we can have a productive and respectful space today. But in addition to the ones that are on screen, if anybody has questions or technical issues at any time, our staff member, Isabella Roberson, is on the call in the wings waiting to assist. Feel free to reach out directly to her in the chat, or if you're having trouble, raise your hand and we can make sure we get some help to you. I will also say that it's a pretty cozy group. This is a talk story. It's kind of meant to be a little casual. We encourage you to turn on your video if you are comfortable, but of course, we understand sometimes it's not the right time, but if you are able, we'd love to be able to see your faces. Welcome to the new folks. I'm just going over some guidelines here. I actually think right now would be a great time to do just a very quick round of introductions. Let's just say our name, any affiliation such as school or workplace, office, and how, yeah, let's just stick with that, keep it simple. So I'll start. My name is Alex Yee. I am the Coastal and Water Program Manager with the City and County of Honolulu's Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. And I'll kick it over to Izzy.
Hi, I'm Isabella. I'm also, I'm an AmeriCorps Vista with CCSR. And like Alex said earlier, I'm helping out with tech. So if you have any questions, please feel free to message me in the chat. OJ, you want to go?
Hi, everybody. My name is Vijay Siddharth. I'm Climate Adaptation Research Analyst in AmeriCorps Vista with the office. Also here to assist during this meeting. Feel free to message me if you have any questions. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks. And then let's go around. I'm just going to name you in the order that you appear on my screen. So let's do Haley, Dorothy, and Anna.
Hi, everybody. My name is Haley Cook. I actually work at the Resilience office with these folks, but I am just joining as a participant today on my lunch break. So nice to be here.
Thanks, Haley.
Hi, I'm Dorothy Mulkern. I'm a Washington Sea Grant Fellow working with the Port of Seattle. I'm originally from Honolulu, Hawaii. So that's why I've been sitting in on some of these meetings. Thanks.
That's great. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Mines. I'm also with the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. I'm with the Equity Program, and so sitting in to see how these sessions go.
Thanks, Hannah. Next on my screen, I have Marcia or Marcia, Brandon, and Kanani.
Hi, this is Marcia. I'm not seeing how to put this in gallery view, but anyway, I can't see myself. I am a retired librarian and archivist, and just interested in environmental things and what's happening with this office. So that's about it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon. I'm with the Office of Senator Mike Gabbard. Just taking notes. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Aloha, everybody. My name is Kanani Imai. I'm from Hawaiian Electric and just interested to hear and observe. Thank you.
Thank you. And then lastly, I have Tatiana, June, and Nicole.
It looks like Tatiana might be having some problems with audio, so I think she'll connect.
Okay. Hopefully we can get those resolved. June, you wanna take over?
Hello, happy Aloha Friday, everyone. Thanks for having me on. I'm in between eating my lunch, so I'll just have my camera off until I'm done with that. But yeah, just interested to hear what you guys are up to and also kind of see the format actually of how you're hosting your meeting. Would love to get some more insight on kind of a virtual interaction world. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Nicole, do we have you? Love to hear from you. Maybe, oh.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm just listening in today on my lunch break also. I'm an engineer at Armed House.
Great, welcome. Well, thanks so much. It sounds like we have a really great group of people here today. So what we're going to do, I'll give you just a very brief introduction to our office and the Climate Ready Oʻahu Adaptation Strategy project, what it's looking at, what it's kind of about. We'll also do a check-in on sort of what equity in the climate adaptation space means and how we're thinking about it. And then we'll do an activity about an equity screen tool that our office is working on. And then that'll be it. So some background on our office. The Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency was established in 2017 after voters affirmed the need for the city to be more resilient, reduce our contributions to climate change, track climate change science, and understand and prepare for the impacts here on Oʻahu. I am happy to report that the City Council just adopted the city's first climate action plan just 2 days ago on Wednesday. And now we are well on our way to co-creating this Climate Ready Oʻahu adaptation strategy with you all. So here's where we are so far. Using surveys, workshops, we also have a dedicated advisory group and meetings like this one. We've gathered kind of what are the most important issues around climate change impacts that people have told us they're concerned about, like hurricanes and sea level rise. We've performed a risk assessment to make sure that we're armed with specific data about these issues. And now the climate adaptation strategy is sort of reaching the end of this phase 2 and figuring out how to prioritize adaptation actions. And so now we're sort of beginning phase 3, thinking about the efficacy and impacts of different adaptation strategies. So today in particular, when it comes to policies, programs, projects needed to adapt to climate change, we want to anticipate and avoid inequities while also taking advantage of opportunities for these efforts to further improve equity. So as a very quick reminder for those who are already familiar with Climate Ready Oʻahu, based on sort of the information that we had gathered in those earlier phases, we've distilled the climate hazards down to these 5 hazards. So sea level rise and coastal erosion, which is we're already experiencing in a lot of places and is only expected to accelerate through the end of the century. Sort of these intense episodic rain incidents that we're calling rain bombs, which have caused, of course, localized flash flooding and debris flow. This is the Pali, which was closed for more than a month due to the landslide. Increasing temperatures, which are exacerbated by things like the urban heat island effect that makes cities hotter than the surrounding countryside. So interventions there. Decreasing precipitation, and this also goes with changing rainfall patterns and norms. So you can sort of see on this map areas that are projected to have much less and much less rain, depending on the area. And then, of course, what we refer to as the triple threat of hurricanes, which include, of course, heavy rain, coastal storm surge, and strong winds, all in the same incident. So we've been looking at the relative consequences of each of these climate change impacts across 6 categories, including physical health and safety, mental health, community cohesion and equity, economic prosperity, infrastructure, and environment and culture. Okay, so these were the climate impacts that Climate Ready Oʻahu has been trying to address, or that is, it is trying to address through targeted adaptation strategies and actions. So with that context, we are now going to move into the equity portion of today, and we're going to hopefully discuss how how we have been and propose to embed and center equity in different stages of the adaptation, planning, and implementation process. So just to make sure that we're all using a common understanding and shared language, want to quickly go over what we mean by equity. So equity work is aiming to make a difference in the lives of people who have been historically and disproportionately negative impacted by systems. So it's both about outcomes and process, and it's demonstrated through the fair treatment and meaningful involvement and representation of people within the communities that we serve, regardless of race, color, national origin, income, and with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of laws, regulations, and policies. It aims to ensure that all people have the opportunity to benefit from solutions while not taking on an unequal burden of negative impacts. So please keep that in mind as we do the activity that a little later. So lastly, equity also has a strong purpose of correcting systems that have historically been negatively impacting vulnerable communities. So our office has developed an equity check-in process, and the office developed this a while back and has been using it in the development of our different strategies and documents. And this equity check-in process is our internal sort of way to make sure that the work that we're producing, the work that's coming out of our office that's going into the documents that we're putting together, is asking the right questions and centering equity in that work. So it's been used in the Oʻahu Resilience Strategy, and then subsequently in the recently adopted Climate One Oʻahu Climate Action Plan. And now we've been using the same process in the development of Climate Ready Oʻahu Adaptation Strategy. So For example, during the information gathering stage, we designed a heat study to use some heat sensors that would be deployed in the community. So in order to figure out where there was the most need for this data, we used a combination of demographic information and other socioeconomic vulnerability indicators to strategically select candidate neighborhoods that had high vulnerability to heat due to factors like lower income, higher proportions of seniors, and considerations like that. So, again, we've been using the equity check-in process to work toward making sure that what goes into the plans and strategies that we create is centered in equity. But we also want to focus on the actions that come out of these plans. We want to make sure that the implementation of any adaptation strategies, particularly right now that come out of Climate Ready Oʻahu, are also considering equity in the outcomes of the implementation. So toward that, we've been working on trying to develop the equity screen. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And the goals of the equity screen are really to just ensure the most equitable outcomes of each action. And they're meant to be, this tool we're thinking is meant to be a tool for our partner city departments who will be sort of leading the implementation of actions that come out of the climate adaptation strategy, making sure that they are armed with the right questions to do those three things: identifying potential burdens to vulnerable groups, teasing out opportunities to reduce and eliminate burdens, and finding opportunities to improve quality of life for vulnerable groups. So as they are implementing the policies, designing programs, and doing that, these are the questions that we hope can be flagged early enough in the process to make a difference. So how have we been developing the equity screen? Well, we've heard directly from both the community and our advisory hui about some of the values that they think are most central in climate adaptation. As you can see, equity is a huge focus, as is community and concepts like pono and aloha. And we've also heard directly from folks about specific issues that they're concerned about. Ways that the community are affected differently by climate change, ways that impacts can inequitably affect different groups and populations. And so we also have been, people from all over have been sharing with us through forums like the Community Kuka, which is Olelo Hawaii for discussion series of processes and conversations. And our stellar equity team has also been leading equity foundations trainings with other city staff to make sure that people across the city are armed with all of the information about equity to be thinking and asking the right questions. Lastly, we've also taken a look at examples from other cities that have tried to implement equity screens in their climate action and adaptation planning processes. So San Antonio is one. We've also looked at equity screens from cities like Portland, Milwaukee, Madison, Seattle. And so those city examples, the information that we gathered through our through our outreach and engagement process so far for Climate Ready Oʻahu, and also some of the resources from the city and county, such as ordinances, resolutions, and the City Climate Change Commission's Climate Change and Social Equity Guidance document. So all of those things came together to create the draft equity screen that we want to share with you today and get your feedback on. So I've just done a lot of talking. Let's do some interaction. This is sort of just a fun activity. I don't know if you know, but it is Hurricane Preparedness Month. We are now in hurricane season. So we thought that a fun way to practice using this annotate tool would be to ask you guys about how you've been doing with hurricane preparation. So to use the annotate tool, at the top of your screen, you should see a view options drop-down menu. And one of those options should say annotate. And then you'll get this bar that's sort of below it. And on that bar, you'll see one of the categories says stamp. And so using the check mark and the X in the stamp tool, we'd like to ask you to fill in by just stamping either a check or an X in the boxes about how you've been preparing for hurricanes. I'm getting a message that there is not a tool for annotate in the iPad. I think you're right, Marcia. I think what you can do through an iPad is, it's like, I think it's called draw or something like that. And you should be able to like draw a check or an X with your finger, but you're correct that you don't have the annotate tool specifically. So I am seeing some X's and checks roll in. No draw option either. Okay. I'm sorry about that. We'll see if we can figure that out for future sessions, but thank you for raising that with us. And feel free to weigh in through the chat as well. All right. There seems to be a lot of people who are prepared for hurricanes. I think that's great. There are a lot of things that you can do. The Department of Emergency Management has some helpful infographics, as does our office's social media. So please make sure that you are armed with the information that you need to prepare your families for hurricane season. And now I think we are hopefully well practiced with the annotate tool, and we can move on to our activity. So I'm gonna save this down and then clear it. Okay, so this is our current draft of the equity screen. This is the first half. And the exercise that we'd like to do with you today is to consider yourself in the position of someone who's been asked to implement the action of developing a hurricane evacuation plan that includes transportation for all that require evacuation. So imagine that you've been tasked with implementing this action. You have to make this plan, and you're given this tool to think about the issues that were identified by the community for equity. So using the same checks and X's, I think there may not be a lot of space in the yes and no columns. So we can tell the difference between checks and X's. So go ahead and disregard the yes, no, and reason columns for now. But we'd like to just take some time right now to allow you to go through and think about, we'd really like you to think about the reason that you're making the answers that you're choosing to make. So I will stop talking and we'll take some time.
Alex, did you want us to write in our reasons next to our check or X, or?
You can write in a reason if you want using the text tool. I don't think that there will be space for everybody to be able to do that. So we're asking you to think about it, and we're going to discuss, a couple of these in a moment. But I want to remind folks that if there is, an issue that you don't think is related to your task of developing a hurricane evacuation plan, to go ahead and use the X tool. But thank you for that question. It's a good question. All right. How are folks feeling on time? Are people feeling ready, or does anybody want a few more minutes?
Could we have a couple more minutes?
Sure. Yeah, I know some of these really take some thought, so. Oh, someone discovered the question mark tool. I like that. All right. Do folks still need more time, or you can continue to add your stamps? I think what we're going to want to do right now is just open it up for some discussion. So let me save this so that we have it. And then the first question that I want to ask is, there are some, oh, this is what I was going to do. So there are some of these questions that have differing answers, like different folks looked at the same question and came to different conclusions about some of these issues. And that's, I think, a really important thing to note. And I'm curious, hopefully, maybe can someone who made this X and someone who made a check in public spaces, could you share with us sort of the reasoning that went into how you determined your answer? So who said that they think that public spaces, accessibility to public spaces does have a relation to hurricane evacuation planning? You can use the raise hand function or thumbs up or whatever.
That was me.
Okay.
And
You want to share your thinking? Like, what was the connection that you made?
the connection I made was that an evacuation plan requires looking at geographic access. If there is, the required movement in public spaces, or if there's congregation of people, in public spaces. The accessibility of those spaces could include like if they have stairs or ramps. That's my thinking. And there's more that's going on in my brain, but I can't articulate yet either.
No, thanks. I think that makes sense. Does somebody want to share why they said they didn't see a connection? For me, that's a harder thing to explain. How about if we look at one of the ones down here? There seems to be more disagreement on something like air pollution. So I'm curious, maybe can we hear from someone who doesn't think that there's a connection or didn't find a connection on air pollution? I'm not afraid to call on people. But we've gotten a message in the chat. Overdeveloped areas like EVA create traffic jams that prevent equitable evacuation routes, including Department of Hawaiian Homeland's lands in EVA Beach. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
Alex, I can share the flip side. I had put the check there, and I really like Sandy's comment because I hadn't even thought of that. Depending on where you're located, the amount of traffic that you're in to evacuate could contribute to air pollution. But my thinking was just what kind of transportation are you taking? Is it a public bus? Is it one of our electric buses? That could be a factor in decision making of how is your transportation option contributing to air pollution?
Yeah, thanks for that, Haley. That's a great point. And I also appreciate this addition. It's a great point as well. Okay, so I'm going to save this down and clear it out. We have one more, the other half, the second half of our equity screen, and we're going to do it again. This one's a little shorter. I think now people are sort of gotten used to the exercise. So I think we'll give you guys a few minutes to go through these as well. This is exciting. It's like watching the results roll in on election night. Just as exciting, equally exciting. And I forgot to mention that you can download a PDF version of our current draft equity screen from our website. It's available at the link on the screen, and also I think may have been dropped into the, yes, has been dropped into the chat by Izzy. I know it's hard to see the whole thing on two screens, so you can download the whole thing and review it later, or share it if you want. Cool. No X's on this one, huh? No question marks? Ah, there we go.
I think you need an unsure category.
That's a good point. That's a great point. In addition to, the unsure category, maybe the follow-up would be, what information do I need to get in order to answer this question? We've opened the floodgates to the question mark tool now. Makes sense. I mean, there's no right and wrong clear-cut answers here. But I think it is interesting to see that there can be consensus around certain things. There can be certain things are probably much easier to answer. And again, I'll just point out that different people can look at the same issue and come to different conclusions. And so there is a degree of subjectivity to this, the ability of this tool to be used, which is sort of something that we want to think about as we think about how best to design a tool like this. So does anyone need more time, or are we thinking we're good? I don't see any hands. Hearing none. Thank you. I'm going to save this down as well. Clear this out. And then move us along to, it's not what I meant to do. Sorry. Move us along to the rest of our discussion questions. So we have been discussing number one. Thinking now about the exercise that we just did, if you were tasked with developing this hurricane evacuation plan, implementing this action, now having gone through this exercise and filled out this screen, what would your next step be? What do you think you would do next? What do you think someone should do next?
I have an idea. I can offer one.
Sure, thanks.
I mean, once you've gone through the screen and you've checked yes or no, having somebody else look at it to make sure that there isn't something that maybe slipped your mind, or challenge your own biases and understanding what impacts, what considerations should be made.
I think that's a great idea. And it makes sense because, you know, kind of like what we were doing, the questions that had differing answers prompted further questioning and further discussion. So that's a great idea. Does anybody else have any sharing any ideas or thoughts about what you would do next? I see a comment in the chat. It would be awesome if you come back to community who attends, gets emails about their input was used to impact policy, specifically and in which departments. Perhaps it can lead to community focusing on areas that they are most passionate about. Thank you for this comment. I think what I'm seeing here is the desire for a feedback loop, right? And the desire for transparency and I guess accountability. I also am seeing in this, not to put too much, you know, put words in your mouth, but I'm also seeing in this the theme of doing direct engagement to, you know, affected stakeholders and specific groups and organizations that maybe have been involved in the process before. Do you want to add anything, Sandy? I don't mean to speak on your behalf or put words in your mouth.
Oh, first of all, Kalamai, my last Zoom went late, and I am really impressed with how you're running this. I'm learning about facilitating while participating and arriving tardy. So I don't want to take up too much time. I'm here to listen to other community members. And you're experiencing what some teachers do is in this Zoom verse, you're like, hello, hello. So I will just say, because I work for a community networking nonprofit in Eva, what we hear time and time again is, well, we went to that community meeting and we gave our input and then whoosh, it just disappears. And the feeling like that they were unheard. So the way you summed it up with a communication loop that comes back, you know, like we're looking at zero waste economies. Well, zero waste community input, where we gave our input, took our time, we trusted you. And I do trust this office and the people that I've met in it. And that alone is cool. Now build that trust by getting back to us and saying, well, this department is working on access in this place, and inviting the community in, because in our area, communities are leading. We are fixing up parks that haven't been able to be fixed up. Harness our energy, the wisdom of all the people that I've met in Eva, especially the Hawaiian cultural practitioners. So provide avenues for us to do that, and not just serve the mission that someone else already has, but create missions. Because boy, I'm surrounded by folks in Eva and all across Oahu that could do that. So a little bit more than just a communication loop is opportunities loop, I guess, so that it could lead to opportunities for collaboration. And then, I don't say no more, but mahalo for the chance to elaborate.
No, thank you so much for sharing, Sandy. I think your points are so well taken, and this is the type of feedback that is really useful to us in trying to make sure that we know what a successful equity screen would look like, right? I also see here in the chat, if departments are required to complete an equity screen for each action, could the screens be posted online so community can see and comment? I think that's another interesting idea. Earlier, Dorothy, did you have your hand raised? I saw you came off mute. Did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, just we are talking about communities that aren't present, like people experiencing homelessness. I highly doubt that they're in the Zoom meeting. I don't know though. You really don't. But yeah, we want to engage those communities, and I really liked what Sandy said about coming back to them and not just disappearing after that initial engagement. So
yeah, thanks for that. That's a great point. You know, thinking about this process and just the concept of screening for equity and the goals that we outlined earlier for how an equity screening tool is sort of what it's trying to do, these three goals. What types of changes, improvements, fundamental rethinkings of the tool that we currently have drafted do you think would be helpful to make it more effective? Unless you think it's like perfect, which I don't think anybody does. So keeping in mind that as a screen, this series of questions that are meant to prompt some of the connections and identifying and teasing out is just the first step, right? It's just your first screening. It's meant to highlight and get you thinking about connections that you maybe wouldn't have made otherwise, so that you can then go and dig in and actually do the work to explore those issues. But that maybe if you hadn't purposefully with intention sat down and thought about connections, you never would have known to go in and do the work on some of the issues, right? Even if you wanted to and had the intention and time and resources to do it. So I think that's sort of the nugget of the essence of what a screening tool could be used for. And I'm just wondering if folks have any feedback on this particular format or this particular screen. Yeah, thanks for the comment in the chat, Sandy. Working through public schools, our public school system as an avenue to access diverse populations, and also providing infrastructure to host community engagement. Yep.
Hi, Alex. If I could chime in just with a comment, I think kind of going off of what Anna said a little bit, when I was doing my check marks, I had a very specific kind of a scenario in my head, right, that I was thinking through of evacuating. And then I think it was Sandy who brought up just like road congestion. And my mind just like wasn't even there, So I think a lot of the benefit of the tool is having multiple people provide input on one topic or scenario project you're looking at, because I think that's actually where, but then you end up, I think, with check marks kind of in like everything a little bit. So, but I think that was the benefit for me, was that multiple people were providing input because they were looking at it just from such a different angle, So.
No, thanks, June. That's a great point. Earlier we talked about the idea of someone filling it out and then giving it to somebody else to look at, or maybe a second person filling it out. But I think what you're saying is that there's even more sort of benefit from folks filling it out together. And, that way, some of the discussions that maybe you had early in the process will help you better understand and answer the questions later in the form. So I think that makes sense too. That's a great point. Thank you. Okay. Well, we're coming up on time, and I just want to open the space to any other sort of thoughts about equity in climate adaptation, maybe things that you've seen, issues that you think are important to highlight, issues with frustrations with the process in the past, or concerns with the process that you might have seen. That's a great point. I will stop sharing so that we can all see each other.
I'm worried that we're missing vulnerable groups because we don't have that experience, or that's my personal concern, and I'm not sure like how using a shelter during a hurricane might impact people identifying as trans, and like a lot of these places have bathrooms that are gendered, So I mean, because these aren't my experience, like my personal experience, I wouldn't even know some of the problems that we might come across. So I think that the more we talk to people about this, the better off we are. And I'm also a little concerned. I've come to a few of these meetings and there's only usually like 10 or 20 people, and like there are so many people on Oahu and in the state in general. So I'm like wondering, how can we, like, I've been telling my friends about some of these meetings, but like how can we get the word out better so more people can participate? Yeah, so those are my thoughts.
Thanks so much, Dorothy. I really appreciate that feedback. And again, that's a type of information that's really helpful to us. We are, of course, aware that there is a lot of work to do to reach more people than just the folks who have been showing up in the Zoom meetings. This is something that we're very acutely aware of, and it's been a challenge, particularly during COVID for us to figure this out. But it is something that we're constantly trying to think about and improve on. Sandy has a hand raised. Sandy, do you want to go?
I will lower my hand eventually, but I can't talk and do it at the same time. I apologize for coming late, and I can't see everyone's face, but I appreciate that this is the start of a diverse group. And I will say that I know people and trust people in your office, and I appreciate that you are creating new pathways and new models that might go to other departments in the city and county. So I just want to honor you guys for asking and having these conversations and looking at new pathways. The other thing is, I know that your budget and your personnel are not unlimited. So I would say that my offer to work with you to train facilitators in the schools, I'm happy not to just assign that to you, but I'm happy to help with that. We have an extensive Eva Ina education network with 36 teachers at 16 schools. And because I'm a school teacher by trade, I've seen the power of folks, and there could be people untapped all over the community that you train. And I would be happy to help with that, because community empowerment is what we're all about. The other thing, I really appreciate what was said, Dorothy. I mean, right now, a lot of people are at work. So if you have a job, you can't come. So just in general, another big direction is to think about synchronous and asynchronous. Like if someone gets off work at 2, can they still make check marks and maybe do comments in another way? Of course, that's digital savviness and Wi-Fi access, but at least it could help meet some of those who this modality and this timing is not helping. Because I really believe that your office is very sincere in looking at exploring lots of avenues. So again, mahalo to you and to the other participants.
Thanks, Sandy. Those are some great ideas, and I have your contact information. I'll certainly reach out, because I think that there's a lot of exciting opportunities that you sort of pointed at there. Does anybody else have any final thoughts? Okay, well, I do really want to thank you again for spending some of your Friday with us. For many people, your lunch break. You know, I was gonna put our, sorry, I was gonna put our website up here. So you can download the form that we were talking about. You can learn more information about the Climate Ready Oʻahu project in general, including you know, a lot of the information that we found so far in climate impacts. You can check your house on a map tool that we made to see if you're in a hazard zone, things like that. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have further thoughts. You know, maybe after you close the Zoom and you have a thought, please reach out to us. There is contact information both on the website, but I'm putting my email in the chat. And I just want to thank you again and respect your time. We're at 1 minute. So thank you everyone for coming today, and really appreciate all of the insightful comments. Thank you.
Hello, Alex.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.